Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Do you hear that? I have the bottle of antibiotics right here next to me. I'm ready to go. We don't know if this is going to help anything, but I have them, all right? We have them. If you didn't listen to the last episode, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but I had to go to the dentist. I have a bacterial kind of infection, and I have some antibiotics. I'm hoping it fixes all of the other problems. Go listen to the last broadcast. You'll hear about my trip and me thinking I was going to die and all of the medical issues going on with me. And so I've taken the initial dose. I took it a couple of hours ago. I am hoping to see some kind of positive impact within 24 to 48 hours. And we'll go. You can hear from my voice, I don't sound 100% because I'm not. If you listen to everything that happened on my trip, I probably shouldn't even be broadcasting. What I should be doing is probably just giving my voice a rest and not doing this. But man, it's been so long. So if I start coughing, please forgive me. I was going to try to broadcast earlier today, but it was 108 degrees outside, and that means the studio is going to be like, 300 degrees. So we thought, heat was probably causing some of the issues with my throat. We talked about that. So, it's only 101 right now, so probably it's not going to help much better. But here we are. We're going to try this. We're going to see how it's all goes. You get to be a part of it. So let me say good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, August the 25th, 2026. It is currently 7:13 p.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from the Theology Central Studio, located right here in Abilene, Texas. And I'm going to not worry about everything that's going on with me, and we're going to try to get something accomplished that will be beneficial. Now, as many of you know, I'm trying to keep up with like 6 different Bible reading plans. I have fallen way behind over the last, week with the trip, with everything going on with me health-wise, everything that's happened, I'm way behind. But I started looking at some of the days that I've missed, and I noticed that 1 Peter chapter 1, 1 Peter chapter 2, basically all of 1 Peter was a part of one of the reading plans. So I started looking at it just briefly this morning, and then I had an appointment. I had to go to a dental appointment. So I grabbed the Sermon Audio app, connected it to the car, and immediately started playing the last thing I was listening to, which was VCY Radio. VCY Radio, if you'll look up the Sermon Audio app, if you look at it and scroll down a little bit, you'll see radio, you'll see Sermon Audio, Radio 24/7, Radio Puritan, VCY Radio, and then Lighthouse Radio, I think is the name of the other. And so VCY Radio was playing, and it was John MacArthur. And John MacArthur was preaching from 1 Peter chapter 1. I'm like, well, isn't that interesting? My Bible reading plans have me in 1 Peter chapter 1. So in 1 Peter chapter 1, he was basically focusing on this very specific part. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 4. To an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled, and that does not fade away, reserved in heaven for you. Now, why he kind of was trying to do with this is that the way we can endure trials and difficulties in this life is because of this inheritance that we have that is incorruptible and undefiled. And if we'll focus on that inheritance, then we can make it through this life because we have this great inheritance. And he offered, I think he primarily said that the inheritance was, I thought for a second, we just had a disconnect, but that was a Sirius XM notification. They're adding a channel dealing with Dolly Parton because she passed away today. So that's cool that they're already going to be honoring her with a channel. So if you're interested in that, but that was that sound. I had to look immediately because I thought, that's a Church One notification. We have been disconnected, but we haven't. All right. So he was looking at 1 Peter chapter 1 and this idea that we have an inheritance. And if we focus on that inheritance, that helps us overcome our trials. And that he basically kind of gave the idea that our inheritance is God himself. In a sense, we inherit God. Now, I'll read the whole text. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who according to his abundant mercy have begotten us again to a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible, undefiled, that does not fade away, reserved in heaven for you. Yeah, I mean, we can have a long discussion about how exactly all this should work out. But then he goes on, who are kept by the power of God through faith for salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while it need be you have been grieved by various trials. Now when it says, in this you greatly rejoice, what is the in this referring to? Is it referring to the inheritance? Is it referring to the fact that we are kept by the power of God? Is it referring to the fact that we are through the faith for salvation ready to be revealed in the last time? What is it referring to? All of it? And we could get into how exactly we should read it. And so I was listening to that. I didn't have a chance to hear a lot because I got to my appointment, had to go in, and I didn't have the sermon. You know, if I was listening to a sermon on sermon audio, I could have got back into the car and started where I was, but this happened to be on VCY radio. So maybe I could look up what the broadcast, I'm assuming it was from Grace to You broadcast that happened today, and I could find it, and maybe we could do some work on it. But that fit perfectly with my reading in 1 Peter. So I thought that was wonderful. Great. Then I go to that appointment. They're going to put in medication for me at Walgreens. I go to Walgreens at one point in the afternoon. Even though I even called, they told me it was ready. They said it wasn't ready. It'd be another hour. So I came back home, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go back out again. When I went back out the second time, I grabbed my iPad and I opened up Sermon Audio, and right there under New Sermons, it was at the top of the list. New sermons. I see a sermon entitled, let me pull it up right here. I see a sermon entitled, if I have it right here, yes, Silencing the Lion. Silencing the Lion. And it was the very first, it was the newest sermon under the newest sermon tab. I'm like, all right, hot off the press. Now, immediately I thought when I get home, I'm just going to review this because it'll be, you know, hey, it'll be something I can do, and it's right off, it fits perfectly. So when I started listening, I only listened to a little bit, I started listening, and I realized it was 1 Peter chapter 5. And you can guess, obviously, you can guess which verse. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And I thought, okay, 1 Peter 5:8. Well, this is interesting. 1 Peter 5:8 gives us the roaring lion. The sermon is entitled Silencing the Lion. Does 1 Peter 5:8 give us the instructions on how we are to silence the lion? When I started listening, the pastor claims that there are 6 words in the context of 1 Peter 5, verse 8, like some verses before and after, or at least the rest of verse 8. There are 6 words that kind of gives us the ability or the way in which you and I can silence the lion. Now that's interesting because when I read 1 Peter 5:8, I don't see anything about silencing it. I am told to be sober, to be vigilant, because we have an adversary that roams about like a roaring lion. It doesn't say here's how you silence it. It tells me to be sober and vigilant because my enemy is like a roaring lion out there seeking to devour me. It doesn't say how to silence it. It tells me I need to be sober and be vigilant because I don't want to be devoured. So it's weird that a text that tells me be sober and be vigilant so I won't be devoured now turns into a text that tells me how to silence the roar, how to silence the lion. And I'm like, if we could silence the lion, that would be obviously silencing Satan. Can we silence Satan? And if we can, exactly how do we accomplish this? So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this sermon, we're going to start working through it. Now, again, some of you are just tuning in. If you listen to the broadcast I did earlier today, it tells about everything going on with me health-wise. So my voice doesn't sound right. It's 100. Well, it's now only 100 degrees outside. It was 108 earlier. So I made the studio as cool as possible. So we'll see. If I start having problems, start coughing, you know what's going on. For those who don't, go listen to the last episode. I did the best I could. Considering the week I had, no sleep, all of the crazy things that happened, I think I'm doing okay communicating. A little bit of problem, but I'm going to do my very best. So here's what we're going to be listening for. First, I want you to consider when he talks about the lion roaring, because he's going to make a big deal about the lion roaring. well, how can we silence that roar? And if we can silence it, what would that look like? If the roaring lion means Satan does this, this, and this, and this, and you can silence that, that would mean Satan would stop that. And so then is there any proof that any Christian has ever stopped Satan from doing those things? Right? So we're going to be paying close attention. If I can silence the lion, then obviously in this sermon, he's going to make this silencing the roaring. Well, and listen to what he does with the roaring and then ask yourself, can we really do that? And then look at how he says we can do it. And then we're going to do a lot of work in the text itself, trying to figure out exactly, is he making the text say something it doesn't actually say? And we may have to follow some pronouns. We may have to follow the way the text is grammatically put together. Is he bringing something into 1 Peter 5:8 that 1 Peter 5:8 itself is not bringing into it? There's a lot here we're going to have to find out. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks to Sermon Audio, thanks to my Bible reading plan, we're going to try to find out, can you and I silence Satan? And if we can, what does a silent Satan mean in a practical way? Are you ready to find out? Here we go. This sermon was uploaded just a couple of hours ago on Sermon Audio. When I got ready to download this, only 2 people had listened to this, so one of those people was me. And I have only listened to a few minutes of it, and I don't know how far we're going to go. I'm not even going to tell you. We're just going to see how far we can get. Are you ready, ladies and gentlemen? Sorry, that introduction wasn't perfect, but hey, we're making it through this together. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Can we silence Satan? The sermon we're going to listen to gives an affirmative answer. Yes, we can. We just have to basically do 6 things. And if we do these 6 things, then we can silence Satan. All right, you can draw your own conclusions. Here we go.
I love that song. When you think of the history and what that was couched in, it is amazing. It is just amazing. Well, tonight we're going to come back to this same passage, only we're going to broaden it up just a little bit and see some more of the immediate context, because you have to do that to find out what our response is going to be to the roaring lion who walks about seeking who he may devour. And so, in a real sense, I once again want to, as it were, bring us into the reality of the spiritual warfare that we are involved in. And to, as it were, either raise the curtain or drop the curtain, as it were, for us to see behind the scenes. When Eileen, we hadn't been here.
So he kind of wants us to see what's going on behind the scenes so that we can possibly silence the roar, silence the lion, whatever the case may be. All right. Now, so at that point, I'm like, okay, I guess you're kind of your basic thesis ready to go. And now he takes this kind of weird detour and goes to this long discussion about his daughter being in an art school, and he gets to be backstage for a play. I know what he's trying to do here. I don't know how well this works or if it's even necessary or if it even adds to anything. You can draw your own conclusion. Look, all pastors, all podcasters, anyone who does public speaking, we always have this idea in my mind. Ooh, if I use this illustration or I talk about this makes it personable. And sometimes we think it makes it relatable. And sometimes we think it's a great idea. And then sometimes when you go back and listen going, I think I just wasted 15 minutes. I don't think that really added anything. You can draw your own conclusion if what he's getting ready to do adds anything and helps sets up what he's going to do in 1 Peter 5. I don't know if it does. I could debate it, but that it's not a theological issue. It's not a hermeneutical issue. It's just one of those, it's a polemical issue. It's an issue dealing with polemics and how you speak and put together your message. You can draw your own conclusion. Here we go. He's just got ready. He mentioned her name and he's getting ready to talk about her at this school, and he got to be a part of one of the plays backstage. Here we go.
Too long, a couple years, and Eileen was in high school. And I would take her to Harrison School of the Arts uptown on the other side of Lake Hollingsworth, and she was getting her education there. And as parents of a Harrison student, we were, I don't know if it was a requirement, probably was, but anyways, they would have us be involved in certain things that the School of Arts was putting on. We really weren't that active in the PTA, though we knew stuff like that was going on and that kind of thing. And I was given the opportunity, as part of my volunteerism, to go to a play. Not my real cup of tea, but I went. And yet it was something that I have thought on and about several times. I don't know what the play was about or whatever, but it was basically my job as a parent to be behind the scenes, behind the curtains, and to be behind there and to see everybody working together. And I have to confess that I was amazed. I was amazed at the professionalism of those teenagers. And they had this one young lady that she was she was drama. She was unbelievable in her acting and performance and everything. And she was having kind of like a double role. And so she was out there, and I couldn't see it because I was behind the scene. And she was out there all involved in things. And then she would come back, and there would be a bunch of students, several students, not a bunch, but several students around, standing in a circle. And she would immediately come back, run over, get in the middle of those students, and they would all reach down, and they would pull up a sheet. And it was high. And I thought, well, that's odd. And then it was nothing but just a moment, and then they just let the sheet drop, and she was completely different. I mean, completely changed. And I was amazed at, the cooperation and how that could.
Okay, now remember, an illustration is supposed to do something with his overall argument, or his overall thesis, his overall he's going to try to tell us how to silence the lion. He's going to tell us how to silence, the enemy, how to stop this roar from occurring. And so I'm just sitting there at this point kind of going, all right, you mentioned about you want to drop the curtain or lift the curtain so that we can see. All right, so is this like he's going to drop the curtain and we're going to be like, oh, there's Satan. We see him now. So is this going to be about, I'm just trying to follow how the illustration is put together, and I don't think I used the word polemics in a correct way. So, but forgive me for doing that just a second ago. But you get the idea. This is more about the only criticism here. It's not a hermeneutical one. It's just more about how he's setting up his message. And again, all of us, anyone who's preached, anyone who's taught, we all make this mistake sometime. And our mind, we think, oh, this fits perfectly. And then when you're done, you're kind of like, why did I go into that story? So. Now maybe he's going to make it work. You can draw your own conclusion here in a minute. I'm not really like, if you're asking me right now, if we were to stop going, okay, how does this fit? I don't know. I don't know for sure how this fits. I really don't. Other than he used the term drop the curtain, lift the curtain. And so is it about you drop the curtain, lift the curtain? We say, ooh, Satan is different. But is 1 Peter 5:8 about Satan being revealed as being different, or I don't know. Let's just see. Let's see how he puts this together.
Really change. But when you were back there and you could see it, and then she would go out and be another person in the play. Well, we tend to go along in our Christian life, and we know, as what Adam preached this morning, about sin. Very good. And we battle that. And he approached it that way. And then towards the end, he got to the point, which I was glad he stopped preaching, because now it comes into my part. There's a lot of things behind the scene. We have a problem sinning because we are redeemed sinners as believers. And there's enough of the stench of the old flesh that keeps on raising its head. That what I don't want to do, I do, and that what I want to do, I don't do. There's a law principle here. And
so it sounds like what he's trying to say is, okay, in the Christian life, sometimes the curtain needs to drop or be lifted and we can really see what's going on. And one of the things that keeps going on is we keep sinning. Now, his way of explaining it, we sin because there's just enough of the stench left of the old man. That's a weird way. The old man is gone. There's just the stench left of the old man in the flesh. The flesh is not really there anymore. It's just the stench of it. And sometimes it raises its ugly head. That explanation, I'm not a fan. If it's just the stench left, you think at some point we could get some air freshener and just get rid of the stench. There's something far more going on inside of us than just the stench of the old man. The sinful nature is still there unless you believe in the total eradication of it. It's eradicated as far as my positional standing, because I stand before God as if there is no stench, as if there is no old man, because the old man has been crucified, it's gone, and my positional standing. That is true. In my position, I am holy, I am perfect, I am right, I am in Christ, I am completely, from a legal declaration, I am declared to be perfect and holy because of the imputed righteousness of Christ, which is accredited to my account. I'm not actually made righteous in a practical way. I'm declared to be righteous in a positional reality. And the old man is still very much alive in a practical way. And that explains why Christians continue to sin 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In some way, shape, or form, you're in sin. The Bible says, be holy as God is holy. You're never going to be holy as he is holy. Therefore, you're in perpetual sin. You're supposed to love God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul. If you think you do that, you're delusional. We don't ever do it perfectly. So we're in perpetual sin. I can go on and on and on and on and on. That's more than a stench. The old man is still very much active in us. So I guess what he's trying to say is that we live our Christian life and sometimes someone drops the curtain, voila, we get to see. But what he's describing behind the curtain to me is not the reality of life. There's more than a stench. There's something greater going on, and that's why sin is the reality in every church and the life of every Christian, no matter how pious we want to be, no matter how scriptural and spiritual we want to sound, we are sinners at our very core. Oh man, okay? No matter how bad I feel, I know that to be true, okay? So let's see what he goes on to say. So I guess that's what the illustration there was about. Let's see if he continues the illustration. Let's see what happens next.
And it's the law of sin and of death. But praise be unto God, Jesus gives us the victory.
Okay, stop right there. Now, what do you mean by Jesus gives us the victory? Now, see, this is where this always comes down to. If Jesus gives me the victory, and you're saying he gives me the victory in a practical way, well, then you don't need to be giving me a sermon about how to stop the lion from roaring and how to silence the enemy and silencing Satan, because if I have the victory, I don't need to worry about Satan. If I have the victory, I don't need to worry about the stench of the old man. If I have the victory, victory would be, you can't say you have victory, but you don't really have it. You have victory, but it's not true victory. It's only partial victory. It's a little bit of victory. I mean, it's kind of victory, but no, it's either victory or no victory. And so if Christ gives me the victory, you think that victory would be profound, it would be perfect, it would be complete, it would not be partial, because a partial victory is not victory. It can be like someone, I guess, I scored 7 points and your team lost by 75. That's not a victory, okay? You lost the game. All right. So I hate that. Now, you say, well, Christ has given us the victory. Absolutely. He's given me perfect victory in my positional and legal standing before God, because I'm declared to be perfect and holy and righteous because of imputed righteousness. If you're talking about victory in practical life, then you have to do it in this very we get some victory. We don't some. So, and it's always weird because Christians will say, we have victory. And then say, now you listen to the rest of my sermon and explain how I guess you're supposed to get that victory. Well, then is it me getting the victory? Is it Christ getting the victory? It's always confounding and confusing. And so already, before we even get to the 6 things that we're supposed to do, I guess to silence the lion, I guess the lion is already defeated, but he's only defeated in what? An eternal sense? Obviously not in a practical sense. If he's roaming about seeking whom he may devour, he's not defeated in a practical sense. He may be defeated in an eternal sense or an ultimate sense, but not now. So now it's up to me to defeat him in the practical way by doing certain things. Okay, let's see how this plays out.
And that's all surface out in front of the stage. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of other things going on. The Apostle Paul wrote about it in Ephesians, and he took a military a view of the whole thing, where we read, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the wiles," or the deceitful strategies, the stratagem of the devil. "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts and wickedness in heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand in the evil day, having done all to stand. Stand, therefore, having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful in this end with all perseverance and supplication with all the saints." And he goes on then, talks about "and pray for me," and so forth, that even he was battling Satan. And he took a military view on the whole thing about being prepared, and we wrestle not against flesh and blood. However, over in 1 Peter, you can turn there with me if you would, in 1 Peter, we have him taking a biology or an animal illustration.
Okay, I guess going back to his illustration about behind the scenes, I guess behind the scenes we're in a spiritual battle, okay, and that Paul takes a military approach, and that Peter takes a biological, zoological. Because he's going to talk about a lion. Okay, I guess I see what you're saying. Different approaches, so it's like lift a curtain, pull the curtain down, and you get a different approach. I guess. Again, I still don't know how much that actually helped, but okay, I'm trying to follow along. All right, great. All right, let's see. All right, let's just see how he builds his argument here.
And he's going to use this thing of a lion. And he's going to use another picture there when he says, and we considered this last week, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary..." And we spent last Sunday night looking at the adversary. There was an adversary, legal, and one who proclaims our mess-ups to God and so forth. Our adversary, the devil, the deceiver, he walks about like, and he uses the illustration of a roaring lion, and seeking whom he may devour. He doesn't just want you to mess up. He wants to destroy you. This world tends to lighten this backdrop, behind-the-scenes spiritual warfare. Flip Wilson, "The devil made me do it."
Now, in 2026, hearing a Flip Wilson reference, I couldn't even tell you what show Flip Wilson was on. I can't tell you. I think he was on a TV show. Maybe he was. I think he was a comedian. I can't even tell you much about Flip Wilson. I'd have to look it up right now. So it's just weird that a pastor in 2026 is like, Flip Wilson, and I know he's famous for saying, "The devil made me do it." And so did the devil not make me do it? Or did the devil, can we not use that as an excuse? Is the devil involved or is it not involved? Now, it's always weird because sometimes it'll be, Satan will get into your mind. Satan will give you thoughts. Satan will do this. But no. Don't say the devil made me do it. So the devil can't make me do anything, but the devil tries to make me do anything. But I got to be on the lookout because the devil's trying to make me do anything. But if the devil can make me do anything, then it is possible that the devil did make me do it, but I can't say that who knows? All right. But I guess he doesn't like the Flip Wilson idea that the devil made me do it. So then the devil can't make me do anything, or the devil can make me do anything. Yeah. All right. Let's see where this is going.
Well, it may be true, but we laugh at it. Yeah, that's not something. We wrestle not against flesh and blood.
Okay, so he goes with the idea that it is true. It may be true, but we shouldn't laugh at it. So it is true that the devil can make me do something. So can the devil make me do something? Well, if the devil makes me do something and I do something and the devil made me do it, then do I get the blame or does Satan get the blame? And if I get the blame, why am I getting the blame? Well, you let Satan do it. But if Satan can make me do something and Satan is a fallen angel, would he not have then greater strength and ability than me? Say, well, God is greater than Satan. Well, then why did God let Satan do that to me or make me do it? So can Satan make me do something? Someone answer the question. Can he or can't he? He just seemed to imply that he can. And if he can, then why do I get blamed for it? Well, but you let him do it. But wouldn't Satan be stronger than me? Well, God is stronger than Satan. Well, then why would God ever allow Satan make a Christian do anything? Who knows? We were getting clarity here. That's a joke.
That should be a bit of a scary verse to us. He comes as an angel of light. When Jesus preached, he let him have it. You are of your father, the devil. You speak lies, and the father of lies is the devil and its family. Ow. And so then the remainder part of that message, I just went through and looked at some of the Satan's roars in the Bible. Satan roars, and Eve corrupts the word of God and eats. Adam eats with her, and we're all in big trouble.
Okay, so roaring, he's now likening roaring is when Satan, when he came into the garden and tempted Eve, that's roaring. So if Satan tempts you, that's roaring. Now, if we can silence the roar, that would mean Satan no longer tempts us. So we can reach a point, if we follow these 6 things, that we can ultimately stop Satan from roaring. Now, of course, he's importing, this is where it gets weird. He's taking this one verse that Satan roams about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. He's now taking that and then going to any time Satan shows up and go, he roared right there. That's a roar. That's a roar. I don't even know if that's good exegetically, hermeneutically, or even logically. But just think if this is true, and if I can silence the roar, then that means Satan would never tempt you again. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if he's got the answer to stop Satan from ever tempting us again, then this is the greatest sermon in the history of mankind. Because all you have to do is follow the principles, and Satan will never tempt you again. Now, I don't know why pastors keep saying Satan will get into your mind. Satan will do this. Don't give Satan. Don't. Why? All I got to do is follow these 6 things, and I guess Satan will never tempt me again. If temptation is roaring. Now, of course, this doesn't say in 1 Peter 5:8, hey, be sober. And notice it says, be sober, be vigilant. Satan is like a roaring lion seeking whom may devour. It says devour. It doesn't say tempt, but I guess you could say tempt leads to sin. Sin leads to being devoured. Okay, maybe. All right, let's see where else he goes here.
Satan roars in the life of Job and the destruction of his wealth, family, everything, even his health. But it was all under the direction of God.
Right. It was all under the direction of God. So Satan's roar, if it's already limited by God, then God is the one who actually roared against Job, because God is the one who set the whole thing up. So are you getting a clear, I'm not getting a clear picture yet. This is all a little confusing.
Satan roars, and we saw how that Satan was for the destruction of Israel. It talks about that in the book of the Revelation, where he's there ready to devour the child when it is born and the woman gives birth to the child. But not only that, when the Magi show up and they say, where's he, born King of the Jews? And find out it's in Bethlehem. And Pilate says, oh, let me know so I could come and worship him too. Liar, liar, pants on fire. He was lying after Satan. And then when he finds out he was mocked, what does he do? Satan roars, and a bunch of dead baby boys.
So Satan is the one who did these things? Is he going beyond the text here? I want you guys to think this through, okay? I don't like always giving you all the answers. I see. This may make for good preaching, but from a good exegetical standpoint, is Satan... And again, if God controls Satan... Okay, all right, never mind.
Populate, and their blood... Populate Israel, and their blood runs into the soil. You had Jesus in the temptation, right after his baptism, driven out there. 40 days, no food, fasting, praying. The roar of the Satan comes. You got to be hungry. You know, you can take these stones, and he roars, and you can make bread and have your belly full. He roared, but Jesus did not succumb to the temptation 3 times. But then there was another one who had walked with Jesus 3 years, Judas, and Satan entered him, and he roared. And with a kiss, the roar of a kiss, Satan gets what he thinks he wants, and ultimately the death of the Lord Jesus Christ. And then after that, you have, well, I guess it was before that, but then Peter, in the midst of all of that, Jesus says, Peter, Satan has desired you, but I prayed for you. He's going to sift you like wheat. So we get these roars of Satan. And then within the history of the roars of Satan against believers, he can roar and we can fear. He can roar, we can be confused in doctrine. He can roar and believers gossip. He gets us to sin, sexual temptations. He can roar and there is persecution.
So if we gossip, it's because Satan roared. It's not because we have a sinful nature. Sexual temptation is because Satan roared. I thought we were drawn away by our own lust. I thought all of these things come from the heart. So I'm already getting completely confused by what he's really trying to argue. So anything that happens is Satan roaring. So if I can silence Satan roaring, then Satan stops all of these things. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, I guess there's never any more temptation. No, nothing. I don't get it. Let's see. This is so confusing. All right, let's see if he offers any clarification here.
So that is our adversary. And that's all that we really had time to do last week. But the passage just doesn't tell us about our adversary. He tells us what can help us in the midst of this. And it was interesting as we sang the song again, A Mighty Fortress is Our God, how many of those things are found within that particular song. And it isn't that that's just by chance. It's because you have a man of God who knows his scriptures. And he knew the principles, and he put it into, couched it into that kind of a relationship. So tonight,
it's funny. Luther was a man of God who knew his scriptures. Was he right about infant baptism and infant baptismal regeneration? It's like sometimes Luther is a man of God who knew his scriptures, and other times he was a man of God who didn't know his scriptures and taught wrong, false doctrine, almost heresy. Okay, it's just so funny how that can work sometimes. Okay, so... All right. Look, hey, if he knows how to silence Satan, then we need to learn this. So let's see if we can at least get through one of these. All right, let's let him develop this.
What I want us to do is I would like to, well, as it were, drop the sheet and have fully exposed this person who is one thing sometimes in public, can be one thing in what we think of, but yet is fully something else. I want us to look at and to be reminded once again, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but that we are involved in a spiritual battle for our lives. 6 important words to silence the roaring lion.
All right, 6 important words to stop the roaring lion. Now again, notice how he described the roaring. If we can silence the roaring, then he stops tempting you. He stops attacking you. What does that mean? Okay? Imagine there's an actual lion roaring outside your tent. And someone inside the tent says, hey, I know how to silence the lion. I know how to silence the lion. You follow the instructions to the very letter. And then 20 minutes later, the lion is still outside. He's roaring. But wait. I thought we silenced the lion. Did it work or did it not work? And so I need to know, did we silence the lion for 1 second and then he comes back, or do we silence him permanently? And are we doing this? Is God the one doing this? Is this going to turn into imperatives about what you do? Or is it an imperative about what God has done? Is it going to be law-based? Is it going to be gospel-based? I don't know. I do know the first thing he's going to give us, and this one I'm going to, from a textual basis, from a exegetical basis, I don't know if it really works. But let's go through this and see what happens.
And the first one is a little bit surprising, actually. I know Larry, when Larry would sing like the love of God, and he's a boy, I wish I would have written those words, and that was a big thing to him. Well, when it comes to Scripture, if I would have been writing, I would not have come up with this one. Because this one's almost like against it. When we see, we wrestle not against, we wrestle. That means hand to hand, blood, sweat, and tears. A roaring lion. So what is the first word? Well, in context, this starts up at verse 5.
Okay. So he's saying the context of verse 8 is verse 5. Now, if you'll notice, verse 5 says, likewise, you younger people. Hang on, I'm going to look at something. Right, now we get to kind of it's not about how he's preaching or the use of that illustration. He did go back to the illustration with the dropping the curtain and revealing. He did go back to it. So he tried hard to put it all together. I'm going to look here. If you look at 1 Peter 5:5, in the same way, you who are younger, so it seems to be referring back to something, not necessarily looking forward to what's coming down. He's connecting it to this. This is the context of verse 8, and this is the first thing we have to do in order to silence the lamb. To silence the lion, okay? Silence the lambs, okay? I'm not referring to the movie. To silence the lion, the first thing we have to do is we have to start in 1 Peter 5:5, but I don't know if 1 Peter 5:8 refers back to 1 Peter 5:5, or if a new thought has stopped. In fact, yeah. Okay, let's just see how he does this. You need to pull out 1 Peter 5 and start working on this yourself and see how you would put this together linguistically, textually, and how this would work. Let's see how he does it.
Of 1 Peter chapter 5. Likewise, you younger people, submit yourselves unto your elders, lest all of you be submissive. All of you be submissive one to another, and to be clothed with humility. Interesting. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. Humility. Humility.
So the first way we silence the lion, not the lamb, the first way we silence the lion is humility. Now, 1 Peter 5, I think 5 through 9, there are several imperatives. You can probably find them. Clothe yourselves with humility, verse 5. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, verse 6. Casting all your care upon him, verse 7. Be sober, be vigilant, verse 8. Whom resist steadfast in the faith, I think is how it's stated in verse 8. Verse 9. Resist him steadfast in the faith. That's how it's stated. And so you have resist him steadfast in the faith. There's a lot of imperatives there. A lot of things that we are commanded to do. I think you can see that. But man, I think verse 8 is the crucial linguistic point here, because all of a sudden in verse 8, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. All right? So these are active imperatives, but he gives be sober and be vigilant. Why? The sober and vigilant is connected to the fact that you have Satan roaming about like a roaring lion. I don't know if the other imperatives are given. He doesn't say, also, be sober and be vigilant, because Satan, in other words, I've given you these other imperatives, and on top of those imperatives, now be sober and vigilant, because you need all of these imperatives in order to silence the lion. I don't know if that's the way it works. And then if you look at verse, seeking whom he may devour, right? And then it says, resist him steadfast in the faith. And hang on, I'm going to look at another verse here. Verse 8, let's see, verse 9. I'm looking. Yeah, I guess some translations, hang on, I'm going to look here. I'm trying to put this together. I know I'm talking away from the mic. I'm looking for a different Bible here. I'm going to look for I'm having a hard time following this through from just the way the text itself is put together. And this is why you listen to sermons, because sermons make you have to do this work sometimes. Yeah. So all of a sudden it says, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom someone to devour. Resist him firm in your faith. The people he's telling to resist, the people he's telling to be firm in the faith, are the people he told to be sober and to be vigilant. So I think if we could put it this way, if we were in a hermeneutics class and I could write this on the board. What does Peter explicitly tell these Christians to do in relation to the roaring lion? What exactly does he tell them to do? I don't know if you can go back to verse 5 and 6 and 7. I think his clear answer is be sober, be vigilant, and resist him. Humility is not grammatically presented here as the means by which we silence the lion. I don't think it is. Let's see if he puts this together.
He doesn't start off with, buck up, be a man. You can take him on, rah, rah, rah. I've never played football, never aspired to play football. There isn't a football team anywhere, even in the minor leagues or in the Cubbies, that they would ever want me to play football. So I don't really know what they say in a huddle. It is a huddle, right? They huddle before, but I have a feeling that when they do, they all go in there and say, okay, you're going to do this and you're going to do this, and don't drop the ball. Don't blow it. And he's doing this thing. But then one of those things that they usually, I would assume, say, now, go out there and kill them. We're going to pump up the guys, kind of, if nothing else, trash talk them. Just go out there. You guys are going down. You are so out of this league and, and all that kind of stuff. But we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And we cannot do this ourselves. The arm of flesh will always fail you. You see, that's why we have other verses like, greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. Well, who's the he that is in the world? Well, he's a lion, and he's a spirit being that that shoots fiery darts at us. Don't be saying, well, I'm a pretty good shot. One of the pietisms that you haven't heard for years, now you can hear it. That kind of trash talk to Satan should gag a maggot off a gut wagon. That should be putrefying to our thinking. We are supposed to be people of humility, even in the battle, especially when we're fighting and going up against the roaring lion. Now, I find it interesting that humility is mentioned several times here, but it's couched in a couple of different ways. First of all, verse 5. Well, let me just say that the term elders just doesn't mean older people, because notice chapter 5, verse 1. The elders who are among you, I exhort, I who am a fellow elder and a witness of the sufferings of Christ, also partaker of the glory will be revealed. That this is the elders, the pastors of the local assemblies of the church that are there. And this is what he says, likewise you younger people, and it's addressing Christians.
Okay, I know I stopped him in the middle of a sentence. I am trying to follow all of this, okay? That whole football illustrate, I don't know what that was. Gaga, maggot on some kind of I don't know what all of that was. I get I see his whole basis for this is that, okay, Satan is a roaring lion and we can silence him by being humble. But he's not constructing this like, what's going on? Peter seems to construct a sequence of exhortations or imperatives, right? Humility, dependence upon God, sobriety and watchfulness, and then recognition of the adversary, and then resistance. That seems to be, he kind of gives these different imperatives. Are the imperatives for the humility and the other things, are they critical to the roaring lion part? I don't know. He does say, therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God that he may exalt you in due time. I think there's a key element there. I'm looking here. If you look at 1 Peter 5:10, but may the God, actually look at verse 9 and 10. So resist him, that's the roaring lion, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. But may the God of all grace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you've suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. So it seems to be the idea that, hey, under this suffering, if you wanted to take this, the humility seems to be more focused on the suffering, not how we deal with Satan. I guess you could argue you have to deal with Satan in a humbling way, but it seems like there's separate issues going on here. You've got the humility. You've got the casting all your anxiety upon him because he cares for you. The humility and the casting all your anxiety upon him seems to be linked together, right? Then you come to verse 8, be sober, be watchful, be vigilant, because your adversary prowls around, resist him firm in the faith. man, I just have a heart. I know on one hand, it would be easy to say, well, come on, you got to do all of these things. But Peter doesn't seem to act. He almost just refers to it as a separate way. Hey, while all these other things are going on, humble yourselves, cast all your cares upon him. Oh, also be sober and be vigilant because you have a roaring lion out there who wants to devour you. So resist him and stand firm in the faith. So it sounds like he's just talking about a lot of different things. I don't know if we can put this logical flow of thought there. The Satan part seems to be self-contained. It seems to be self-contained. Now, I'm not saying humility isn't important in the battle, because if we're humble, then that means we should be so humble we acknowledge our own weakness and our own lack of ability. But I don't know how you can say being humble silences Satan. It doesn't. Humility acknowledges that you can't silence him and you need someone who's stronger than you to take care of Satan. So humility, and what, you're humble and Satan is like, oh, sorry, okay, you're so humble, I'm going to leave you alone. Your humility makes me not tempt you. Yeah, I don't see that in the text. I don't.
Younger Christians, submit yourselves to your elders. These are qualified spiritual men that have been involved in the battle. But why would that become here? And it's out close to the end of the book. Well, you got to understand what the book was about. If you remember, a couple of things to remember is that wicked Nero was ruler in Rome. He was upset at the slow development of his kingdom and said, most believe, that he burned down Rome. A lot of culture, a lot of things were done. He was hated. This man was a nasty dude. He would throw a party and put people, kill them, or even leave them alive, impale them, set them on fire to light his Buffy and Tad parties with other leaders. This guy's a reprobate on steroids. He is wicked. And that's couched in the historical thing. And he needed an out. So he started blaming the Christians for doing it. And then the Christians were under tremendous persecution. So Peter, one of the 12, a dearly beloved one, that he, not John, who was the beloved one, but he was loved of the Lord Jesus in the top 4. And he was very bold. But he was also an elder, recognized as being an elder. And Christians were being terribly, terribly persecuted. Just to see the kind of the spirit of the book itself, turn with me to chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 6. And in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being of much more precious than of gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to the praise, honor, and glory to the revelation of Jesus Christ. Chapter 2, verse 12. Another one. Having your conscience honorable among the Gentiles, that when they speak evil of you as evildoers, they may, by your good works, which they observe, glorify God in the day of visitation. Then drop down to verse 19. For this is commendable if, because of conscience towards God, one endures grief, sufferings wrongfully. For what credit is it if when you are beaten for your faults, you take it patiently? But when you do good and suffer, you take it patiently. This is commendable before God. For to this you were called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example that you should follow in his steps. Chapter 3 and verse 13. And who is he who will harm you if you become followers of that which is good? But even if you should suffer for righteousness' sake, you are blessed. And do not be afraid of their threats, nor troubled, but sanctify the Lord God in your hearts always, ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you of the reason of the hope that is in you.
Okay, I'm sorry to cut him off in the middle. I'm going to let him continue here in a second. I'm just baffled here because supposedly this is how we silence Satan. And instead of really explaining how we silence Satan, he's now kind of going back and I guess he's going to talk a little bit about humility, and I get that. But I need to know how this silences Satan. Now, maybe he's going to get to it. And so then we have to, there's a lot here we've got to figure out. I'm still trying to figure out the structure here, linguistically, textually, how this fits together. And I'm still not convinced that the humility part, I think 8, I'm going to try to put this together and at least offer my suggestion. I'm still struggling with it. Now, the pastor may be right, and there may be good reasons to doing so. He's not really justified it linguistically, textually, grammatically. He's not helped me here. So I'm going to let him go through this long section, and then maybe he's going to tell us what happens when we're humble and how Satan, I guess, I don't know, just can't function if we're humble. I don't know. I'm going to see how this all works together. I'm going to try.
With meekness and fear, humility. And he just said, you're suffering. You're going to be beaten. We share in the sufferings of Christ. And he keeps on down. Verse 16, having a good conscience that when they defame you as evildoers, those who revile your conduct in Christ may be ashamed. For it is better if it is the will of God to suffer for doing good than for doing evil. And then chapter 4 and verse 1, therefore, since Christ suffered for us in the flesh, arm yourselves also with the same mind. So the whole book is a preparation charge for suffering. And as he's wrapping it up, what does he say? Now, young guys, the ones who probably want to go out and start, eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, and, we're going to limb for a limb, and you hit me, I'm going to hit you more, and the idea of fighting it. No. Submit yourselves. Have humility. Submit yourselves unto your spiritual leadership. But not only that. Notice what he says as he continues on. Submit yourselves to your elders. Yes, all of you be submissive one to another. Be clothed with humility. Why? Because God is noticing. God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves. Now the humility, the ultimate humility was unto God. Submit yourselves under the mighty hand of God. Realize the battle is of the Lord. In that song when some people don't know how to say the Lord Sabaoth in a song A Mighty Fortress, that is the God of hosts. Submit yourselves unto God, the God of hosts, the one who has all of the angelic host that can fight for him. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. When you are suffering, when you are persecuted, when you are tempted, when you're battling, when you're staring the lion in the face, cast all your care upon him, for he, God, cares for you. Job.
Okay, how does this silence Satan? I don't understand. I don't get, I am baffled here. I don't get, I know we're over an hour. I'm going to try to let this play out, and then I'm going to try to walk through this section and see if I can make some sense of it.
Job. How did Job handle all of that? Yet, in all these things, he did not sin. Because he was concerned about and looking at and casting all of his life upon God and not upon his circumstances. He understood it all. He was experiencing it all. But it was an act of humility. I bear the brand marks of Jesus in my body, Paul would say. And that would be the mark of identity. Don't suffer for evil. But if you suffer for doing good.
Isn't this weird? Because now he's taking the humility and he's going backwards with it. He's not now looking. I guess this goes, according to him, textually, the humility goes back to the suffering that the whole book is about. So in the midst of suffering, humble yourselves. In the midst of suffering, submit yourselves to one another. In the midst of suffering, cast all your anxiety upon God. So that goes with, okay, he now just connected, but I guess it also supposedly looks forward. So all of this is about being humble and suffering in a humble way, okay? But then it also has to do with how I fight Satan. So I don't know. Is it how I'm supposed to deal with suffering? Or is it's supposed to do with both? So I guess textually, grammatically, he's saying it points forward to the book that came before, but it also grammatically, I guess, connects to what comes after when he talks about Satan. So far, he's not yet explained how this deals with Satan. I'm still waiting for the Satan part here.
If Satan is really after you, there must be a good reason. Now, don't get proud about that, but be honored by that.
If Satan is after you, there has to be a reason, a good reason. So, okay. All right. All right. I'm trying to follow.
So we have the word humility that is here. It is submission to the spiritual leadership. It is submission to God, verses 6 through 7. Humility means a low-mindedness, that you're not too good to serve others, or in the recognition that you are a servant to another. As Adam said this morning, you're either a slave of sin or a slave to God. In a real sense, that's all too. It was the word to be tied to. Having your mind, a low-mindedness, but it's tied to something else. It would even be a word for an apron, to guard and to protect. But it doesn't really stop anything because you're relying upon another. Well, that is the couch context. That would be the backdrop of these others that are more specific. Because in chapter 5, verse 8 of 1 Peter, we now have two particular words that are in the immediate context of what he tells us.
How does humility silence Satan? He's just, I don't even understand what just happened in that entire part of that sermon. I don't get it. So I'm going to try to follow this. So if we take a literal structural, kind of build a literal structural representation of this section, I'm going to try my best here. I'm doing this in real time. So if this doesn't go well, that's okay. Because I want us to struggle with it. The sermon is irregardless. It's meaningless right now. I don't even care about the sermon. I care about the text. It's part of my reading schedule. I'm supposed to read this. This pastor at least brings this up. He offers kind of an argument. I don't really understand the argument, and I don't even know what it does. If I'm humble, then Satan's like, oh, snap, you're humble. Okay, I can't tempt you. I can't attack you because I don't attack humble people. I don't do that. But you just said Job was humble. You said Job was humble. If Job was humble, then why did Satan attack him? You just defeated your whole thesis. You pointed out Job as an example of humility. He did not silence Satan. He got ripped apart by him. I don't. You defeat you. Okay, so, but I'm going to try to go through this quickly, all right? Verse 5, we have younger ones, submit yourselves to the elders. All of you clothe yourselves with humility towards one another, because God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. So here, why are we going to be humble? Because God opposes the proud. This is not about Satan. We don't want to be in opposition to God. I humble myself so I'm not in opposition to God. It's not that I humble myself to silence the lion. This is where I humble myself so I'm not in opposition to the lamb. I think can I make it work that way? I don't know. That's the first thing I see here. All right. God resisteth the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, so that he may exalt you in proper time. This is all God-centric. This is all God. This has nothing to do with Satan. This is about God not being in opposition to God. This is about God then exalting you, or what's the exact word? Exalt you in due time. Then verse 7, cast all your cares upon him, for he cares for you. Verse 8, be sober, be vigilant, be watchful, because your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may to devour. And then verse 9, resist him, firm in the faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. That's the structure. I don't see... It's kind of like, what... It almost goes this way. What should be my relationship when it comes to others? It should be humility. What's my relationship with God? It should be humility. And then I cast my cares upon God. Then what is my, how do I deal with Satan? By being sober and vigilant and resisting him. I don't see how this is giving me a strategy and how to do so. And he's not even explaining how it works. To me, humility is, if you look at chapter 5, verses 1 through 4, I'm going to argue humility here is primarily relational. It's relational in my relationship towards others and my relationship towards God. 1 Peter 5, 1 through 4, Peter has addressed the elders, and then he says, likewise, you younger ones be subject to the elders. Then he broadens it, and all of you clothe yourselves with humility towards one another. All right. So, Peter is not saying, hey, Satan is on his way. Weapon number one, humility. It's not. Here's how Christians relate to leadership and to one another, and they do so in submission and humility. I don't. And then he gives the theological reason. Why should we be humble? Why? He quotes, I think he's quoting Proverbs. I think that's chapter 3, verse 34. He quotes, in 1 Peter 5, God resisteth the proud, gives grace to the humble. I could be wrong. I'm looking in my, you can, I'm almost positive that's Proverbs chapter 3. I think it's Proverbs 3:34. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. And that sets up, hey, why are you humble towards one another? Because of God, or you're going to be in opposition to God. This has nothing to do with Satan. It's God focused. I don't even understand what's happening in this sermon. Okay. And then by introducing God, that sets up verse 6. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. Humble yourselves to one another. Why? You'll be in opposition to God. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, and he will exalt you in due time. Right? So the direction is explicitly towards God. It has nothing to do with Satan. All right? God opposes the proud. So what do? Humble yourselves. And where? Under whom? Under God, not Satan. Under the mighty hand of God. And what's the purpose? That in due time, he will exalt you. In other words, you humble yourself, God exalts you. You exalt yourself, God opposes you. Verse 7, I'm looking. I think it's interesting. Verse 7, he gives imperatives. Is verse 7 casting? I think that's a participle. I could be wrong there. So it looks like it's like this. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, casting all your anxiety upon him. So to me, the text is saying that casting your anxiety upon God is an expression of you humbling yourself beneath God's hand. If you humble yourself beneath God's hand, then you won't be so, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to do it myself. You're going to cast your anxiety upon him because you're humble enough to acknowledge all of your anxiety and all of how overwhelmed you are and how you're having a hard time. If you're proud, you may hold on to it, and then God is in opposition to you. All right. If you look at verse 5 through 7, this is all God-centered. The controlling logic is this is a relational thing between others and then ultimately for God. And then I think verse 8, you get a new pair of direct commands. And these are, I don't know, we'll call them sharp imperatives, all right? Be sober-minded, be watchful, be vigilant. And why? Why should you be watchful? Why should you be vigilant? Because you're humble? No, you're watchful and vigilant because your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion. You need to be watchful. You need to be vigilant because look out there. There's a roaring lion out there. Now, I wouldn't have to be watchful and vigilant if being humble silences Satan. Because I was humbled in these verses. I don't need to do anything. No. Even after the discussion about humility, then he says, be sober and be vigilant. I don't see how the humility silences Satan. It makes no sense logically, linguistically, any other way. And our adversary is the devil. He walks around seeking whom he may devour. And notice, he makes the roaring the big issue, but I'm looking here, I'm trying to look at the Greek and look at everything. The principal verb action, and anybody can correct me here, looking at the text, and I know I keep looking down and not talking directly into the microphone because I'm trying to look at this in real time and figure this out. The verb action isn't on the roaring. The verb action seems to be focusing on the prowling or the walking around, seeking whom he may devour. He is compared to a roaring lion, but he's seeking someone to devour. The verb action is on the seeking, roaming to devour. The roaring, he's like a roaring lion. To me, if you focus on silencing the roar, you're actually focusing upon the wrong component of the entire metaphor. Don't focus on the roar. Focus on he's walking around seeking to devour you. See, the problem is that Satan is loud and he's noisy. It's because he's dangerous because he could devour. That seems to be the issue. And then verse 9 seems to be the explicit response. Resist him. Who's the him? It is Satan. The pronoun here, resist him, or I think some translations may say whom resist, the pronoun goes right back to the devil. We talked about follow the pronouns. So Peter, what should you do? What should Christians do about the devil? Resist him. That's the imperative that responds to Satan. That's the imperative. I don't understand. And how do we resist him? Firm, steadfast in the faith. How do I resist him? By being steadfast in the faith. I don't get it, ladies and gentlemen. I don't understand. And he didn't even explain that. He didn't even talk about how humility silences Satan. His whole argument is that we can silence the roar. And then he talked about all the things the roar is. Well, then that means Satan would never touch us anymore. Well, all Peter would need to do is like, hey guys, the devil's out there. He's like a roaring lion, but you don't need to worry about him if you're humble. Because if you humble him, it's solved. But the text does not present it that way. I don't get it. I don't understand. That's why you have to look at the text grammatically. That's why you have to look at the text linguistically, logically. You got to try to see where the argument begins. Preaching can make it sound like it works so beautifully. And I'll make it very clear. If I was a young preacher, I'd be like, ooh, this is good. I can make this work. I got 6 things here. I got 6 things. Man, this is my outline. But having an outline, making it preach good, even if he preached that in even a more dramatic way, it wouldn't matter. It doesn't work. It does. I don't even understand the imperatives. I don't understand the participles. I don't understand the verb action. I don't understand the referent going back, following the pronoun back to the. I don't understand anything from anything that I would ever learn in basic reading, much less in hermeneutics. So, but you can go listen to the rest of the sermon. We're at 79 minutes. It's been about 100 degrees in here. We'll see if I have a full-blown coughing attack and drop dead tonight. But if I do, I went out, I finished, I did a lot of work on 1 Peter chapter 5, which is what I'm supposed to be reading tonight. So I don't know if it was beneficial to you. Hey, this is my Bible reading journey, and this is where we ended up. And I'm great. And you say, well, don't you get frustrated? I get frustrated by the sermon, but look what the sermon just made us do. It just made us do a lot of work in 1 Peter 5. So ultimately, the sermon is irrelevant in the sense that it doesn't matter if I agree with it or disagree with it, get frustrated by it, don't get frustrated by it. I just spent 80 minutes trying to figure out 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 5 through 9. I don't know if we have a better understanding, but now you can work on it, and guess what? We're all hopefully better off. Now, it's been a long time, so let me say thank you to people who are listening. All right, here we go. I'm going to go to the dashboard really quick. We have people listening in Maine, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, Texas, and Canada. New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, sorry. My looking at the map, I misread the map. I apologize. Don't get mad at me, Nova Scotia. Don't get mad at me. And Ontario. And for those in Ontario, I think President Trump just said he wants to name Lake Ontario Lake America. Oh, good gracious. Oh, someone save us. Okay. I promise all my Canadians, I'll still call it Lake Ontario. Okay. I don't care what is happening. Okay. And it's still the Gulf of Mexico. I don't care what you do. Okay. All right. So yeah, that was I heard that on the news. I don't know all the details. I'm like, what is okay. Never mind. And hey, I know Canada, I know your government's really ticked off and you're coming at us with some tariffs because of what Trump is doing. Hey, just remember, I'm on your side, guys. Okay. Oh, Canada. Okay. I'm pro Canada. Okay. I don't know what's going on over here. Okay. And just, hey, if y'all close the border, just remember, I need you guys to be waiting. And like, no, he's the Theology Central guy. He likes Canadians. He's good. He gets in. Okay. The rest of America, I can't, just let me in. All right. Just let me go there. All right. Someone just let me go to Canada. Please. The insanity here needs to stop. Okay. All right. I'll stop. All right. Thanks for listening. Everyone have a great evening. God bless.